Hey, Bill, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You sound great. It's almost like you've engineered a great room in your place.
It's just a lavalier mic.
There you go. I've had the pleasure of reading through your book, and I have to say, congratulations. It's very unique because most people who write a memoir about the music industry throw everyone else under the bus over and over and over again. It's a lot of, I could have done this differently. And you don't get that vibe in your book at all. Is the book that I'm reading totally what you envisioned on writing?
Um, I think if I know what question you're asking, as far as what you're talking about now, yes. I didn't want to be too salacious and whatnot and throw a bunch of garbage. I threw a little bit of dirt, but not a lot of garbage. But I never wanted to write a book because I just thought it would be too much of I did this, then I did that, then I did this, then I did that. And it was when someone, I think it's in the intro if you read it, where that guy said that the music business as we know it or knew it was born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s, and peaked in the 70s into the 80s, and you were there. And when he said that, I went, oh yeah, I can write more stuff that doesn't exactly concern me. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of that. So it did kind of become I did this and then I did that. So in that regard, it's not quite the book that I was wanting or writing, but
Sure. Well, the opening aside, we see the opening of the book without giving away too much. That it talks about how you as a teenager had a band that got signed and things did not pan out the way that you guys had hoped. But ultimately, you meet this person that leads to that thing and that job and that job. And ultimately, you got to where you were. But you're very gracious in that you're not blaming all these people for not delivering on their promises. You're not looking back with regret. You're looking back with a, well, that led to the opportunity. So were you that kind of pleasant person even back then?
um, interesting question. um, was I that kind of pleasant person even back then? I mean, as far as the band goes, I mean, anybody that's ever, I mean, that was a failed dream to a degree. But as you point out, fortunately for me, I picked up the engineering aspect of it right away, and
Yeah.
jumped right into a very successful career right away. So, I mean, the biggest regret, honestly, in that regard, is that I mentioned, well, no, not in there, and the you saw that you go on my website and you go and get the deleted scenes. In there, the last chapter I think is on Christopher Cross, and it opens with, as of this writing, I've never met Christopher Cross. That was another way of another joke that when it was in the original manuscript before the editor chopped it out. And that's all about my start with Michael O'Mardian that I do believe I might mention in the book. But
Yes.
um, uh, but writing with him, and we were both masters, a kind of jack of all masters of none musicians, both keyboard primary, and he was so much better, this much better than me when we started, and within 6 months he was that much better, and then I popped really quickly. So the point is that within 2 years I was working with so many unbelievable keyboard players, I got intimidated basically and gave up.
Well, it's interesting that Three Dog Night was just among the first projects that you worked on, and that's kind of, oh, he's good enough for Three Dog Night. Well, then he's good enough for this, this, and this, and then before you know it, you have a career. Do you ever think of what would have happened had that first project that you got in been like Iggy Pop or something of the metal world?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just glad that I swam instead of sinking. And what I don't understand is, to this day, really, is why in the world Richie threw me in on that project, considering it was his biggest client. He was only engineering them then. It was his biggest client, who was producing both Three Dog Night and Steppenwolf. And if I'd fallen on my face, he would have looked like an idiot.
Yeah.
I don't understand it,
He
but
took a
whatever.
risk. Mike Curb took a risk when you said, hey, I want to produce this. So when I'm asking, were you nice back then? I'm wondering if you just had this great persuasive public speaking kind of demeanor, as a kid.
No,
That's kind of,
absolutely not. None of that, including this. I've never been into self-promotion for that reason. I'm actually a very shy person. I've gotten over it to a degree with, to a great degree, if I'm with people that I'm comfortable with, meaning musicians, anybody in the music business, something like that, or the film business even. I'm okay, but you put me in a party with strangers and you'll find me hiding. If there's a patio, I'll be out there by myself, kind of thing. So I don't know. That's good, bad, or indifferent. That's who I is. But that's why this whole thing of, I'd never done self-promotion, and then I have a book and the publisher says, hey, we have an idea. Why don't you try to make some noise about the book? So here I am doing these things, and I've gotten a lot better now. I'm pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah, somebody like you who has no shortage of things to talk about, it's probably going to be easier than when you talk to a first-time author who's 20 and they were just part of a news story, and that's that. So I appreciate how much content there is in the book, and at the same time knowing this guy held back a lot. Again, he's not being negative. When you've worked on 600 plus albums, for all I know, it's up to 700 between when you wrote it and it came out. You just worked that much. It's cool to see something so concise, something that's unique, and something that's you. So kudos to you on that. How long was it from going, I'm going to write a book, to actually having the final draft done?
Oh, that's a bad subject. Why? Because in the middle is a little bout with cancer. So that extends it a bit for a couple of reasons. But the answer to your question is, and we're going to talk about March 1st having a book in hand. That would be 5 years. No. Sorry, 7 years. 7 years.
That's not that bad. Health aside, and I'm glad that you're doing better, to say the least. I've heard worse stories, or the person going through 3 or 4 co-authors. The former drummer of Guns N' Roses, his book right now, I think it's on to its 4th publisher. So some books take a lot longer than yours, even without health risks going on.
Yeah, I mean, the book was basically signed. Almost in the fall of 2015. Is that right? And I told him it'll be ready the first quarter of next year. And I said, how long should it be? And the guy said, oh, about 100,000 words. I said, oh, I'm at 140 and still going. And he said, that's what editors are for. And then came cancer. And fortunately, it was the throat cancer from a virus, which means that even though the treatment's the same as smoking, and it's one of the worst treatments in cancer, it's got the best numbers in cancer. They get it and it doesn't come back. So that part of it is all good. But then he, when I finally turned it in, said, how do you like my voice? That because it's not the book that a lot of people are going to be expecting from me, as far as the technical kind of stuff. And he said, well, I think it's good, but for educational purposes, it'd be good if you had some stuff. So I went back and wrote 15,000 more words, which I loved that the editor made that an appendix at the end. So that I love the way that worked out.
Well, one of the things I mentioned before about how your first session of note was Three Dog Night, and that kept you away from weird musical genres. It's not too strange to go from Three Dog Night to Streisand and Neil Diamond, etc., because Three Dog Night was funky and at the same time poppy. But one of the people that you've been associated with a lot is Simon Phillips. And I know that Simon can play anything, and he did this time with The Who and Toto, but Judas Priest. But I think of Simon as a metal drummer. So Simon, for better or for worse, kind of gets pegged a lot to hard rock because of his work with Judas Priest. And did he play in Saxon? I don't remember. But he got pigeonholed in a certain respect. You never got pigeonholed, except that I can go, well, Bill, yeah, yacht rock extraordinaire. How do you feel about the term yacht rock?
I don't know. I get it. I totally get it. I can't say that I love it. Yeah, whatever. But I understand it. It's some things that everything gets lumped into that. That's the problem for me. It's a little too wide. But you know what you say about being pigeonholed, to a degree. To a degree, I broke some of that mold. I was able to, but not as much as I want. So when I came from American Recording, where I did a group called Smith, I don't know if you know that record. There was a great it was Baby It's You,
Yes.
a rock version of Baby It's You.
Yeah, you were talking about how it got much more airplay than it did sales, but it was a bona fide hit. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and then Three Dog Night and whatever else that was there. So when I came out of American, and then and I worked with Richard Perry on Streisand. So he goes off to do, I think this is in the book, he goes off to do Carly Simon and calls me in England and calls me and says, the album's almost done. I've mixed it all but 2 songs, but there's these 2 songs I want you to mix, the rock songs. And that's just cracked me up, because that's kind of what he thought of me. And even that Streisand album was not exactly rock, but it was the most rock thing she had ever done. He cut some of the tracks with that female group Fanny and so on.
Yeah.
So it's just so funny to see, to think about that in retrospect in writing the book. And I think about that. And then, of course, as much as I might have loved to do certain rock acts, I never got out of the pop box, so to speak. Never got to do.
It's funny, pop box, but some people are going to go, oh, Bill, yeah, the smooth jazz guy. Oh, Bill, the guy who does adult contemporary. You can't really just simplify what it is you do. One of the guys who played on a lot of the records that you worked on, Steve Lukather, for example, the average layman music fan, it will be like the guy from Toto, the easy listening guy. And you have to go, well, no, he played on 1,000 records or whatever number of records. That's the guy playing on Beat It. That's the guy who played on Streisand. It's a versatile world that you were in. And you worked on a lot of stuff with Jeff Skunk Baxter as well, because you have those engineering Grammys to your credit. So you worked with the top musicians of musicians. So before you kind of stopped thinking of yourself as a musician because these people were so good. What year was that around where you just dropped, I'm a keyboard player, and said, I'm an engineer, producer / mixer?
That would probably be 71.
And I see sheet music behind you, which is actually a really cool idea for a background. Do you still play for fun at all?
No, sadly. And I have a piano in this room, and I've got an electronic keyboard upstairs in my mixing room and whatnot. And I keep saying I'm going to do it, but I don't. The closest I got was, and the biggest reason was that it's not even so much the playing. Sure, I worked with a lot of great players, and I worked with obviously a lot of great songwriters, but that was what I wanted to do as a songwriter. And I think, it tells in the book there, I got a couple of kicks in here and there, but that's what I really, would like to be doing more than anything. And I don't.
Well, I really admire another part of your career, and that you can't, I think maybe the book should be called Bill Can't Be Pigeonholed, because it's very hard to define you. But a lot of people are just a producer, just an engineer, just a mix guy. And you've kind of been able to change it up over the years, where producing and mixing, engineer and mixing. And you talk about that early into the book, about how people think you're just a producer, you're just an engineer. And that also kind of goes hand in hand. I appreciate the part of your book where you're talking about struggling to find approval from your parents about your profession. A lot of people, hint, hint, a lot of people have dealt with that within the entertainment world of, that's nice that you do that, but you could do that in your part-time and your off time. So around what year would you say that it was finally that your parents came around and went, okay, you were right? Was it the first Grammy win?
No, in terms of my father, never,
So that was
never.
never okay.
No, I probably had at least 2 Grammy nominations and several gold records, and he still literally said, "Billy, when are you going to get a real job?" And I had, "Dad, this is my job. I really like it. I seem to be doing good at it."
Yeah.
My mother glammed finally got right on and was, was a mom, very proud and all that. But dear old dad never did it. And I think, he was an Austrian Jew. He was very bright, a medical doctor and whatnot. And I really think it was, he wanted me to attain greatness in his mind, so to speak, which for a Jewish doctor would mean doctor or lawyer. And so, as you know, of reading the book, I started law school to try to make him happy. But if I ever end up needing to be on a psychiatrist's couch, I'm sure that'll come right out.
Well, where I'm going with that is I think that almost everybody that you talk about in your book made it, yet had to justify their existence to those people closest to them. That doctors growing up don't have to go like, yeah, I'm good enough to be a doctor. They just become a doctor. They're a doctor. That's it. Yet people in the entertainment space, performers, even if they make it, and by making, I mean they're earning a living and, the phone rings for them, they don't have to solicit all the business. They still have the rest of their life people they have to make small talk with at cocktail parties or whatnot and justify their existence to. I can't really think of other fields where people tell you to get a job the way that they do in entertainment. Or can you think of another field that has that hesitancy?
Yeah, I can't. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe sports. Hey, I want to play in the NBA. Well, that's okay. You'll never make it. Okay, I get that per se.
Yeah.
But you're one of the people who did make it. 50 years of working steadily, I think we can say. Yeah. And
still going. I got a couple of records coming out that are two of the best things I've done in the last 10 years. I wanted to back up on something, though, that you were talking about, just to show you something that I think is very cool. So when I met my team of doctors, there was a chemo oncologist. He went to print. They were all very bright guys. The lead guy was the oldest. He was 37. He's the oldest. And but this was the newest technology, and that's what you want. You don't want a guy that's 55 having to learn this stuff. Yeah. Especially the radiation. But the chemo oncologist went to Princeton. He went on Wall Street. He was in business. He went on Wall Street for a couple of years and then went, I don't like this. So he goes back to medical school. The radiation oncologist, he too had a degree that you would never expect for a doctor. How about recording engineering?
Oh, wow.
And I went, Zach, his name was Zachary Zumsteg, my Zapper, the triple Z. I said, Zach, what are the odds that there's any doctor in this world that has that as an undergrad degree, let alone mine? He goes, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it's very crazy. So on a follow-up meeting, everything's fine, and it's just typical kind of follow-up. We're just chatting, and I mentioned how my dad became a doctor by watching somebody save his father's life, what motivated him, and this and that. And I said, so Zach, you really made the right decision to do the more honorable thing. And he literally almost interrupted me saying, no. Music is very important to the human psyche and soul. And I thought that was so cool that here's a guy that is literally saving lives, but still has that inside of him about music and the importance of it. Made me feel good anyway, because I feel so less than around somebody like that that's saving lives. My kids, it's funny, I have a daughter that's a speech language pathologist, working in a hospital with lots of serious things, and her brother, her older brother, who is very successful in food industry, worked for a 3-star Michelin chef in San Francisco. he bows down to her. You know, it's like in a similar way. It's kind of wild.
Wow. I guess the recurring theme there is imposter syndrome. No matter the field you're in and how successful you are, that some people might view you as, you yourself might look at what you do as not being as important. The doctor that you're talking about looks at the performing arts as being important to the psyche, but the performer is looking at the doctors doing the real job. So I guess all of us are on an endless treadmill, per se.
And likewise, I got to tell you, just talking to you, I can tell you're a writer, and you know, I that's one of the things that I'm glad I didn't do this before I wrote the book. These things, because I've had a couple of people, you know, I talk to them like I'm talking to you, and I just know if you had written my book, it'd be a lot better than me, because you know.
Well, let's put it this way. When you said you had 140,000 words written originally, when they asked for 100,000, and then there was more written, that means that there's probably 50 to 70,000 words left over, which means the second book of the leftovers, hey, you got another book in you. The second one's a lot easier to write.
I talked to the editor about that at the time, because we really, you know, it should have been divided up a bit differently. But and now maybe that was the right thing to do. I don't know. We'll see how well the book does.
Hey, the key is you finished a book, because going back to an original thing that we were talking about here, when I was talking about your teenage band and how you originally had the deals, I can't tell you how many people I've met in my life, my young life of 39 years of age, where you talk to somebody at a bar and their one claim to fame is that they had a record deal when they were 15 or 19 or 21 and the album didn't go anywhere. And that's the end of the story. That's all they have to say. Or, oh, one time I was at a Kiss concert and Paul Stanley threw a pick and I caught it. And that's the one story they have. So then I read your book, which is like, yes. So then I'm engineering this Grammy-winning album. And you know, the number of stories that you have, it's pretty good. And you didn't quit after you had, you know, a failed record deal or two. You just kept going. You knew to keep going, and hence having a wonderful book of compiled stories like this. So yeah, that's my compliment to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I've said it over and over. I have a very blessed life. There's no question about it. I mean, I knew all of this, but I got to tell you, you know, part about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way writing the book, I started looking at what I'd written and going, wow, I impressed myself.
Exactly. So you were always living in the moment, going, hey, where's the next gig? Let's go to the next gig, rather than going, don't you know who I am?
Yeah, no, it's just, you know, I love what I do, and you know, my dream has always been to drop dead over the console. It'd be something like, okay, guys, I think the B flat in the
Exactly.
That's my dream.
Well, so I've two more questions for you, and then you're a free man, because you've been very generous with your time on a Saturday. Mr. No Days Off over here. And the first one is, having worked with so many legends on so many acclaimed projects, is there any artist that's still living who you're still hoping to work with?
Wow. Well, living but not working. Yeah, there's a couple, but you know, what can I tell you? Bruno Mars kills me, just kills me. Yeah, I'd give anything to mix one of those records. I don't. Yeah. Who else that's living? You know, I mean, there's definitely people I wished.
Well, while you think of that, I mean, if I go through the early credits, there was a few Ringo Starr albums in there. So you worked with a Beatle so long ago that most people would be like, isn't he going to say Paul McCartney? And I'm like, he already worked with Beatles right there. Bill's fine.
Yeah, I worked with all of them, obviously, in that first album.
Yeah.
Genesis drummer Phil Collins. there's someone I really wished I'd worked with too. I just love his drumming. You know, I'm a wannabe drummer, among other things. And I love great drummers like Simon Phillips, like Jeff Porcaro. Very, very different, but both just sensational drummers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil Collins is another one.
And then my last question, out of nowhere here. So you're a musician, you're an engineer, but as we talked about before, when that is your career, when your hobby becomes your career after a certain amount of time, you know, when I was more focused on arts management, I was not listening to music. I was not picking up my guitar. It's only since I was able to put music on the back burner that I now listen to it all day again. You, yourself, when you're listening to music, what do you usually listen to for fun?
Boy, well, as I said earlier, well, maybe I didn't say it, I don't know, but I mean, I love my spread is very, very, very wide. So it'll go the gamut from I mean, I still stay in tune with what's going on the radio today.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you could check my Sirius settings in the car and see that you know, there's a classical one on there, there's a jazz one on there, there's very contemporary on there, there's the oldies, I suppose you'd call it, that kind of thing. So yeah, it goes from anything, you know, enjoyment would be probably jazz, not smooth jazz, which please don't print it, which is neither smooth nor jazz. But anyway, obviously I've mixed a few big records in that field as whatnot. And but yeah, it's a little bit of a lot of things. You know, classic rock, the stuff that I wished I could have worked on. You know, cool. It's a little bit of everything.
More of a statement than a question for me, but a lot of the big pop songwriters in the last 15 years have been from Sweden and Norway. And when you peel back the layers, you realize that they're like basically metal musicians who figured out the formula for a pop song. So you know that the second that they're not working, they're just listening to metal all the time. I didn't know if we were going to find out that you were a secret metalhead after all these years.
No. What do you mean by metal? Give me, because you said that earlier about Simon, and I don't think of Simon as a. I mean, I know about Judas Priest, but is Judas Priest metal?
If you didn't know any better, you would say that Judas Priest is metal. A couple of songs of theirs are heavy. Some, I guess, the easier way to say would be hard rock. Metal would be more double bass drumming, louder,
and fewer chords and lots of distortion.
Usually that's the case. Sometimes you'll see metal that's able to switch dynamics and genres within the same song, and it might be more progressive, and they're 9-minute songs, and sometimes they're 3-minute songs, just come and go per se. And I think Max Martin was a metal guy before all this happened. So you never know what happens from the Nordic countries. And
right.
But in your case, Bill, what you see is what you get. That's what I'm learning here.
I guess so.
Pardon you for being so skilled and predictable on that end, but congratulations on this book. Getting it done is 80% of the battle. Promoting it is the cherry on top, I'm guessing.
Well, like I said, it wasn't going to be any cherry for me, but now I'm into it and I kind of like it. Tell me about yourself.
Oh, well, here in New York, Long Island, New York, podcaster, writer, talk to people 6-7 days a week for interviews. And here we are. Your wonderful representative, Ken, said, hey, do you want to talk to Bill? Yeah, I know who he is. Here's his book. And yeah, that's how the interview happened.
And is this for someone, or do you shop it?
It'll go on. Ultimately, a version of this will go on my YouTube channel. It'll be embedded into an article that goes on a different person's website, and I'll probably use a few minutes of it for a TV segment.
Huh. Interesting.
So, well, I mean, let's face it. Back in the early, and if you want, we can totally cut all this discussion out. It's up to you. But
no, I've got plenty of time.
In the olden days, it's kind of like, here's your album. There you go. Big corporation. It's up to you to put this out into the world and distribute it. Now, as a content creator, if you think about it and work on it hard enough, you control where the content goes, how it gets used. If you want to edit it, you can. If you want to take out all your ums and ahs, you can. If you want to put it out raw, you can. If you want to have a 3-hour conversation, you can. I think that's one of the best and worst things about 2021. You can.
Yeah, and done all of those. I just did one for an interview with someone that I happen to know. With I just did another and I was having a particularly bad day with memory. Today was a good day with memory. I only jogged a couple, but I was having a particularly bad day. I blame it on the radiation brain. But anyway,
sure.
He allowed me to take and chop it up to get rid of the ums and ahs. And I'm telling you, it's a long interview, and the first 70 minutes of it, I must have put 300, 400 edits at least to get them all out.
Along those lines, I used to meticulously edit my podcast when I started actually putting out audio and or video of my podcast at the beginning, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. I would cut out my over-umming, my over-eyeings, my mistakes when I interrupted people. And then I kind of realized people want to hear real conversations, real people talking. Why do you cut out the actual humanity from the conversations? Why am I doing the auto-tuning equivalent of a conversation? Yeah. So I just learned over time to go, not perfect. I make mistakes. I get facts wrong from time to time. So do all these people listening to this. Why am I pretending like I'm somebody else? So I think that reading a book like yours, you're not pretending like you're the star or anything like that. You hung out with the stars, but you also humanized them.
Yeah, well, I said it in the book. I've just always looked at my role, producing or engineering or mixing, as the servant role. So you're there to serve the artist and their music. As like when I produced, I don't know if I put it in the book. I can't remember what was cut out, but when I work with an artist producing, if I think something should be changed or different or whatever, I'll make my feelings known for sure, whatnot. But in the end, it's their record. Their name is in big letters on the front. My name is in little letters on the back. I want them happy with it. And as a result, I got great relationships with everybody that I've worked with. Very, very happy about that.
And hence why we can also refer you, before we print your name, we say award-winning Bill Schnee. Like, you could technically say, because I won one award, but hey, it's nice to be talking to the award-winning Bill Schnee. Not everybody can do that in their trade. There's not a lot of doctors who can call themselves award-winning per se.
Yeah.
So I think the other takeaway I have with it all is how you just described your profession as being a servant per se, is it shows how music related to engineering, producing, and mixing is a trade, just like how being a plumber is a trade. Someone goes, come over at this time. I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I want it done this way. We're done. Here's your payment. It's not big, difference-wise between plumber, engineer, and I think that's something to be very proud of. You completed your job.
Yeah, never looked at it that way.
So all the people who were skeptics of what you do, it's a trade that you won awards for. You have this book out, and whether or not they realize it, everyone that we're going to encounter has heard something you worked on, because let's face it, Steely Dan was sampled by how many people? All these records, 30, 40, 50 years later, still listening to them. So yeah, I have to imagine that you're just very proud. But as you just said, the best is yet to come in respect to two of the records you worked in the last 10 years. You're among the most proud of?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the dude is not coasting on anything there.
No.
Exactly.
Ken mentioned Hype magazine.
Yes.
What's that?
thehypemagazine.com is where some of this content is going. I can send, he can send you a link to it, but that's where a lot of my interviews get posted with musicians, actors,
Okay.
comedians, etc.
I see. All right. Well, anyway, as far as that or the video stuff or whatever, yeah, if you think of it, if you'd take the time to write me and tell me where I can find it, send me links or
Bill,
whatever, I'd
we're going to get
appreciate
this
it.
posted. We're going to tag you. That's the damn promise here.
Yeah. You're on social media everywhere?
Yes, sir. It's my last name, Paltrowitz, at Paltrowitz on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. That's where I am. But I'll look you up, and really just very appreciative of your art and your time.
Oh, my pleasure, honestly.
Paltrocast.